Hi everyone, this is Mike Tyndall from Grace Church. A couple of weeks ago we introduced something called Ask at gracechurchmanchester.net, which was a question and response mechanism that you can send in questions during the service. I had a couple of questions in from last week, Good Friday. Actually, I think both came from different people, but they're very similar. So let me read them out and give a few responses. So the first one was, what things fueled Jesus' determination to seek his Father's will and keep going toward the cross? And the other question was, when Jesus was going to the cross, what was his motivation? Was he doing it out of love for those he would save, or was his overall desire the glory of God and restoring creation to God's rule? Great questions. I think it's fundamentally the same question, which is about Jesus' motivation, which is a natural thing to ponder when we think about the huge sacrifice that he endured at the cross. I think a first principle on this is we should take care not to impute motivation or read motivation or guess about motivation in the Bible where one isn't stated. I think we tend to look for motivation naturally, and also modern writing often does share psychological insights that the Bible doesn't always. If we read in motivation too much, we might miss the point of what the biblical writer is saying. However, reading carefully, I'll just get my Bible. I think in Mark's gospel there is a motive that is implied, and that's obedience. So Mark 14:36, Jesus says in his passionate prayer, "Yet not what I will, but what you will." So there's a submission to the will of God the Father there. And then a few verses later, in verse 49, he says, "The scriptures must be fulfilled." And that's a key motif that keeps coming up. Jesus saying, God's plan, God's great redemption plan in history that's mapped out in the scriptures in the Bible must be fulfilled. So there's a key element there of obedience. However, they're not the only motives that the New Testament gives for Jesus going to the cross. And I've actually thought of three more. Maybe you can think of others in your own reading. The three are salvation, love, and joy. So salvation, in John 10, Jesus talks about dying to save his people. He talks about the image of the shepherd and sheep. "I am the good shepherd," he says. "I know my sheep, and my sheep know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep." So the motive there is to save his sheep. Now notice this, verse 18 of John 10. "No one takes it from me, no one takes my life from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down and authority to take it up again. This command I received from my Father." Fascinating. Anyone who might assume that Jesus is sort of against his will being sent to the cross has to reckon with John 10, where Jesus very strongly says, "No one takes my life from me, I lay it down for my sheep." So there's obedience and salvation, but the third motive I think we find in Scripture is love. John 3:16, the most famous verse in the Bible, "For God so loved the world," or loved the world in this manner, "that he sent his only Son." Now, you might say, that's God the Father. But at that point, surely the motive is shared by Father, Son, and Spirit, that out of love for the world, God decided to initiate the plan of salvation. Fourth motive, joy. Hebrews 12 verse 2 says, "For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart." So Jesus also at the cross had a joy, a hope of joy, future joy, in front of him that was part of his motivation. According to Hebrews 12, he did it for the joy set before him. Now, what was that joy? I think it was the people that he would save through his work on the cross and the glory that that would bring to God. And the reason I think that is in Hebrews 2, 10 chapters earlier, it says that Jesus suffered death so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. For in bringing many sons to glory, it was fitting that God should make the author of their salvation perfect through suffering. So Jesus Great joy is tasting death so that others don't have to, or others can be delivered from death, so that he can bring a great company into the presence of God. Now, there's 4 motives. I'm sure you may think of more. There's a combination in there, I think, of obedience, of the desire to save, of love, and of joy. And there, I just want to park one question with you, those of you who see this short video. A useful exercise for us, I think, in this week ahead. How do these insights about Jesus' motivation give us motivation for the way we live? How should these things change our motivations for the way we live? I hope that's helpful. See you next week.